let's go into the next portion of this, the incident that happened with him. So, from what I understand, we already know about the January 6th thing. We're not going to go into details of everybody like Ray Epps and the Kanon Shaman and all these other crazy people that were there, but let's talk about his specific situation. So obviously he was caught on video, waving his finger, allegedly had a can of bear spray in one hand. He was in the building. He wasn't in the building that long from what I've read. So he ended up pleading guilty, pled down. He made a plea deal with them. He was in solitary confinement for quite a few months. I'd say 6 months, maybe 7. I don't remember what it was. He got out of jail and later in 2021 or 22, I believe. I think it's 2021. But and obviously he can't say anything because there's all the legalities going on. But so he was implicated in that. Now, at the time that this went on, I can tell you that probably over half the scene and almost every metal media outlet was like literally just wanting to burn this guy at the stake, figuratively, right? And I made one statement about it and I left it at that because I don't know what happened. I wait for investigations, factual information. I wait for all of this to come out, and I didn't want to say anything because he hadn't had a chance to make any kind of statement. So I don't want to start grilling or dragging this guy through the mud or, sticking up for him or doing whatever because we haven't heard from him. So now the climate has changed a little bit because when I post, here's the other odd thing, and this will go into later in the discussion. I was like one of the only people that posted about him getting pardoned. You didn't hear really any metal media outlet, nobody. I put it up there, and if you type it in Google, it goes right to my Facebook page for the show, which is odd. But when I posted about it, and I was looking at the comments, there were a lot of comments. Believe it or not, you have two sides. You have three sides in this. One side thinks he did nothing wrong, thinks that he shouldn't have had any jail time, and he just had his right to protest. The other side wants the guy thrown in the stockade and in solitary confinement and burned at the stake for the rest of his life, and they call him a Nazi and a white supremacist and all this other nonsense. And then, believe it or not, a clear majority of the people that are in there know that he realized the guy made a mistake, and even though they disagreed with it, I was actually shocked by this. They think he should get a second chance and they want another album. And when I looked back at the comment thread from 2020, a lot of those same people that were wanting to grill him or were sticking up for him were in that big majority that basically said he made a mistake and he deserves a second chance. However, obviously, and we'll discuss this more in the can he resurrect his career part, you had a lot of these people in the metal media outlets that were grilling the guy. So, I'll start with Justin. What do you think about the incident? How do you think, what's your evaluation of what happened? You obviously dealt with some hate because of your profile picture. You mentioned that. What do you think about the incident and him involved in his situation?
Yeah, this is the very first time I've ever discussed this. I don't think I made a post about it. I don't think I've taken a question about it. So yeah, here goes nothing. If he's guilty of anything, he's guilty of being a fucking idiot. Like, let's just put that on the table. The best way to not get swept up in all of this is to not be there in the first place. Me personally, I can understand that people were upset during that time. I think that we had been through a really long year. There's a lot of hypocrisy on the side of the people who are angry at him. This is not the first breach of a federal building. The White House was breached that year. Courthouses burned down. Other government buildings occupied. So this was not unique. It was unique in the sense that it was the certification of an election, but it's a lot of the people that are throwing stones at Jon turned a total blind eye to people doing very similar things because it was politically inconvenient for them to acknowledge those people's actions. As far as Jon himself goes, just knowing kind of some of his viewpoints and some of his political beliefs, the one thing that surprises me the most is that he didn't you had said Ray Epps. So, I mean, again, I don't want to recap the entire thing, but to me, and you can watch videos, you can see people yelling, Fed, Fed, this guy is a Fed. You would have known that they would be crawling in that crowd. And it came out in the wash that, a large amount of, undercover federal agents were in the crowd, provocateurs, whatever you want to make of it. It seems to me that the guy took the cheese right off of the mousetrap, and he should have known better. So, yeah, I mean, again, if he's guilty of anything, I think he's guilty of being an idiot. I wouldn't have put myself in that position. He did. But he's also done his time. That guy has served more time for what amounts to essentially trespassing at this point than anybody probably ever in the history of trespassing. So,
yeah.
If there's a redemption arc, and I think that might be later in the discussion, but if there's a redemption arc for other people in the music industry that have done far more erroneous things than what Jon did, it's kind of hard for me to write him off forever, write his band off forever. I do think it's very irresponsible that he put his bandmates in that predicament.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that when you're in a band of this, the size of Ice Earth, that's your income. So not only did he cut his own income stream off, but he essentially cut the income of 4 other people off, which is, and their crew and whoever else involved in the band, cost the record label money, cost them their record deal. They're now dropped. They don't have a record deal. Yeah. So, I mean, I think sometimes you have to let cooler heads prevail. He didn't, but I don't think that being a hothead or walking into a trap or making one stupid decision, especially he didn't harm anybody. He didn't physically assault anybody. What he did amounts to being an idiot for, 35 minutes to an hour. I don't know. I wouldn't have done it, but the fact that he did it, I don't think it disqualifies this guy from earning a living, being a human being, being forgiven. And I know that there's a lot of people that are going to hate me just for saying that much.
Well, just so you know, everything that you brought up, if you look at the statement he put out through his lawyers, he acknowledges all of that.
Yeah, I read it.
So,
and I thought I thought he was pretty honest, and I thought he was pretty humble in what he said about it. And I think he definitely does acknowledge that he screwed up. And
yeah,
I think there's a lot of people who screw up that never acknowledge that they screwed up. So,
yeah. So before Christian goes, I'll give you guys my viewpoint on it. I agree with you. He made a very poor decision. I agree with you too that that he walked right into a trap, and knowing that he follows a lot of things that most people would call conspiracy theories. Jon is smart enough to know that when they don't have the National Guard there, right? When they say, "Oh, we don't need a National Guard," that was, to me personally, they wanted those people to go in there. Okay, yeah. That's my theory, right? And because if they had the National Guard there, number one, we have the United States of America has the best military, best law enforcement agencies, best intelligence agencies. If these people were really a true threat, they would have never even made it out of their house. Now, let's be real about this. So as far as what he did, here's the thing. Jon, you mentioned Jon having Iced Earth as income and being a pretty sizable band. You have your platform that you can express your political beliefs and spread your word through that. If you go to jail and you walk into the building now being occupied by the very people that have the opposite political views as you do, something is probably going to happen to you. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what his political views are. I'm just saying, if you do that as a matter of, argument, you're probably going to get in trouble for something. Now, I agree with you. He did more than did his time. I get it. But he put himself in that position, as you said, and he took accountability for it. If you look at the statement, the judge in the case acknowledged him and complimented him for taking responsibility for it. And I think that really says a lot about what he did. And so he lost his platform, because if you go to jail and you're silenced, you can't talk to anybody, right? You're on a gag order pretty much. So he lost the platform. You mentioned his bandmates. So I agree with you about those guys also losing their income. But one of the other things that I brought up, and we'll bring up some of the consequences of it a little bit later. They were also put in this lose-lose situation, because what ends up happening, and I can attest to you, when I went to the Blind Guardian page, some of the most vile things I think I've ever seen said about anybody. people were grilling every member of his band and Hansi from Blind Guardian, that were more of the left wing folks that were coming after them. We're going to cancel you and all this other stuff if you don't quit the bands you're in with John. So then, okay, so you're going to have those people come after you, but then when you quit the bands, all of John's supporters are now going to call you a backstabber, and they're going to start bashing you from the other end. So these guys, aside from losing income, it was a lose-lose situation for all of them, right? And he put those people in a bad position. Any of his business partners were put into a bad position, and any of his associates, his bandmates, his family, everything for that. Now, I understand you got a right to protest, but the problem is he let his emotions get the best of him. I mean, he's a human being. I agree with you. I think he deserves a second chance. The guy's a brilliant musician. He took accountability for his actions. The judge compliments him for taking accountability for his actions. So for me personally, let the guy back in. I mean, I don't understand. There's people that still cling to this. Not as many. I mean, believe it or not, there are far fewer people. I was expecting like a vitriol of hate when I posted that, and I did not see that. But again, over the last 4 years, and he mentions this in his statement, a lot of these metal media outlets were pretty much excoriating this guy in like you'd see headlines like, oh, Jon Schaffer ratted out his fellow traders, and, people calling him a terrorist and people calling him all this other nonsense that, look, the guy walked into a building, he made a stupid mistake at a protest. People broke into the Capitol when Kavanaugh was getting certified, and they got a slap on the wrist. So, for me personally, he acknowledged his mistake, and I think he deserves a second chance. That's just me.
Yeah, again, I mean, I would say, though, that, I think that what you're seeing, your news feed is probably somewhat similar to mine, and I know we have like an absolute metric ton of mutual friends on social media. So
yeah,
you're seeing the opinions and the thoughts of a lot of the same people I'm seeing. I don't think that's necessarily universal or representative of like the larger public as a whole. I do think there is still a very large percentage of people who still want him burned at the stake, still don't think he should come back. Mm-hmm. I had a guest on my podcast last week out of respect for my co-host. I won't say his name. He's a prominent guy on YouTube with a rather large following, and just the mention of Jon Schaffer's name, and I wasn't the one who said it, but the guy had an absolute meltdown. That guy's a terrorist. That guy's a white supremacist. All the usual. That guy's a Nazi. That guy was an insurrectionist. He tried to overthrow the government. This guy yells at me for about 3 minutes before leaving the chat, and the podcast is over. It'll never get published. But there are people that are still so. I don't want to use the word deranged, but they are. They're kind of deranged in the way that like they will. Despite what we've seen in the time since, the footage that's been released, the doors being held open, the people walking through the turnstiles and the velvet ropes, and no one died. That's all been debunked. No cops died. Despite everything we know now that we did not know when these people were so angry, they're still holding on to it. So I think that it's fair to say that there's still a lot of people who don't want him back.
Yeah, Christian, what do you think?
Well, there's a lot here. I'm probably going to, in one sense, take a bit of a more of a staunch position on. I don't disagree with anything either of you said. Justin, I agree with you that probably the thing that he's most guilty of is not thinking this through. But at the same time, I don't know him either. We've played together, but I don't really know him. But one of the things that his public persona has always suggested strongly is that he will stand up for everything he believes, and he's not shy about doing so. And I've got to admire him for that, even if I disagree with the actions that he allegedly took. I know about as much about it as you guys. I've read the same stuff. So I also agree that to have him, be imprisoned like that, and I'm going to speculate a bit here, just based on other things that I've heard. Some of the other J6ers have said, is that he probably took that plea deal to avoid staying in prison for 30 years. Or something along that line. Something far more severe was like, look, you've got two choices, and one of them isn't actually winning this and being exonerated and going home with a fine. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm betting, and of course I believe he still can't talk about that. Is that right? He can't.
I don't think he can
discuss the details. So that would stand to reason. But again, I really think that he has never been one to shy away from making it very well known what it is that he thinks and believes. And he's a very patriotic cat. He did we lose Tony?
No, you're good. He's still here.
Okay, cool. So I also thought all the vitriol in the beginning towards him was a bit weird, but I have to wonder how much of that comes from people that didn't like him to begin with, and this just kind of added an exclamation point to how they already felt. Would be that's my curiosity. I don't know either way, but I find that as Tony calls it, I don't know if I refer to this way, but he refers to this as the metal community. To me, again, like with most large groups of people, there seems to be a small contingent of people with the biggest voices, the squeakiest wheels. So I don't know how many people that also have to hold these vitriolic points of view towards Jon,
right?
Really represent the what percentage of the greater community did it really represent? I was kind of amazed when I saw him on TV and I saw that. I was going, well, and then it occurred to me, well, this is what he believes in.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, if I had the kind of gumption that he did on this kind of thing, perhaps I would have been there that day too. I don't think anybody predicted the way it was going to come out.
Yeah.
Justin, you had kind of said that, perhaps he should have known something was up or foreseen that. Tony, I think you kind of alluded to that too. I don't know that if anybody that was motivated to go there outside of, I've listened to, do you guys see Enrique Torio's interview that he did a couple of days ago? First one he did since he was out, he did it on, I want to say it was PJ Media, but that's not right. Anyway, he was talking about, they knew what they were doing when they went there. Mm-hmm. And they are shit stirrers. This is what they do. They are disruptors. They are, they're a pain in the ass. They're the antithesis to Antifa. And, but even they did not expect things to go into this direction. And so we can speculate all day too about whether or not the 28 FBI assets, and I think it's funny the way that they characterize them. If you listen to the words they use, these were not agents. They were associates, they were assets, they were contractors, if you will. So God knows what it is that they were. I mean, how many of these we can speculate again? Were these potentially some of the, you guys remember when Gretchen Whitmer, the governor, supposedly was kidnapped? And it was basically, it was associated with FBI assets. I wonder if these guys got busted and it's like, look, we'll put you out here on the ground for this and we'll take some of your time off or something along those lines. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. So to circle back around on all of this, I don't know that a man as smart as Jon either would out there be waving his flag and doing what he knows is right if he could have thought for one moment that it was going to collapse into something this ridiculous and be weaponized. I'm going to also say it out loud. I'm pretty damn sure that this whole incident, based on what I have seen and read, was weaponized against people who support Donald Trump, support the president in general, our current president in general, wanted to perhaps even from it cultivate some sort of public sentiment and support for the incoming administration and the Democrat Party in general. I don't know these things, but I think they're worthy of speculation and discussion on a certain level. And I'm not saying that I know those things as a fact. I don't. So, but again, does he deserve a career? Absolutely he does. And I think it's not going to be easy for him. But again, he's a smart businessman. He figured out how to get iced earth that far. He'll figure out how to get it that far again. And I think that we'll probably see, like you, Tony, you had mentioned how much support that he seems to be getting now. And again, I have to wonder if some of those voices are just voices from people who stayed quiet in the beginning because they didn't want to be associated with it. They didn't want to lose. Our culture is so bizarre right now. It's very absolutist. You are either with us or you're against us. If you criticize Donald Trump, you're against Donald Trump. If you criticize the Democrats, you are a far right winger. These things are ridiculous. Everything. Life is nuanced. Nothing is that simple. You know what I mean?
No,
So, and you know that I have been, I love it. I don't know about you, Justin, but I personally delight when people mistake me for a right winger because I am criticizing the left. And I love it when they mistake me for a left winger when I am criticizing Donald Trump, because it keeps them guessing. And it means to me that I'm sticking true to the principles that I have in terms of being a critical thinker. I don't have to blindly support anybody. We should be calling balls and strikes on the people who run this country, just like we would at anybody else that works for us.
Yeah.
So, and every president, every administration, every Congress is going to get stuff right, and they're going to get stuff wrong. And we can't say, well, see, he got that wrong, and then just keep a score of one or the other. We got to be honest with ourselves and keep score with both. That's the only way that the power that Jon, for example, felt like he was standing up against. It's much easier for that kind of power to run roughshod over all of us and get away with the kind of crap that they do if we are so absolutist in everything that we, it's, come on, man, it's divide and conquer. Very simple. This is a very loud Sun Tzu stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So one or two last thing here. I said that I wrote down a couple of things as you guys were talking. What was the...
Well, you just took the words right out of my mouth while you look at your notes. I mean, I have echoed those exact same sentiments. I don't know how many times. It is a very difficult time to be a rational person in this country right now. Mm-hmm. It's a very hard time to have an opinion about anything, because it doesn't matter if you take one side of it on any issue. You are now forever hated by the other side for that opinion, and it doesn't matter how many times you apologize or take sides over here. Everybody is so cult-like right now. It is so divided. It is, it's a very difficult time to be like a rational centrist right now.
Right. The one thing I will say is one of the things that people bring up, both left and even like, people that are like right-winged, is they talk about, Christian, you mentioned it, that, he sold out his, all the people that he was associated with. And, the thing is, I can guarantee you those people have never had to sit down at a table with someone from law enforcement telling you you're probably going to spend the rest of your life in jail, or you take a slap on the wrist and get probation. And, and these people will be critical, but I guarantee you those same people would be like, oh, yeah, I'll take the probation.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, it's not like he's being interrogated by the local cops either.
No, exactly.
No, the scariest law enforcement branch that the world has ever seen.
Right,
was calling up his ass with a microscope.
With the full weight of the most powerful government the world has ever known. So yeah. I'm sure he was shitting his pants. I mean, it's hard to say what that guy went through. It's hard to know what they actually threatened him with. It's hard to know what he was actually up against, because I guarantee he's got some sort of a gag order. He's definitely got some sort of a stipulation in his plea agreement where he's probably not allowed to write a book about it, give an interview about it. I'm sure there's probably a lot of things in there that we'll never know what he truly went through. My guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's allowed to probably talk about it, because there was, I think Vlad TV did like this huge hour-long interview with the Canaan shaman, and he was allowed to talk about it. So, but everybody's different though.
I don't think that dude got the same kind of deal though. I think that dude just kind of like did his time or whatever.
He got released early for something. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like 100 days early. Yeah. And I don't know if that's relevant to what it is we're talking about or not in terms of what kind of deal.
Yeah. I don't know.
But he did go directly on to Tucker Carlson. In fact, didn't he run for Congress or something? I'm sure he did. And I said, look, man, and I was watching the interview with him going, if you wear that outfit when you're serving in Congress, I'll vote for you. Why not? Fetterman gets to wear his tracksuit. We need to send the shaman to Congress, shake things up a little bit, and bring them back down to reality around there.
I don't know if I want to applaud or cry every time I see that dude walk in his sweat shorts and his 5XL Everlast hoodie. It's like, in a way, I'm kind of like, all right, man, like, you're the everyman's man. You don't give a shit. Like, Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of punk rock and kind of cool, but I'm also just like, you fucking slob. Like, you are
Yeah,
getting
you
paid how
gotta
much
have
money?
some
Like,
reverence for the office,
yeah, man, stop by Men's Warehouse on your way to fucking work tomorrow. And yeah, don't show up looking like that again.
Yeah.
Big and tall stores.
Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.